Shalom Aleichem. Mishnah Yomi is in chapter 3 of Nedarim, Mishnah number 3, Gimel. Yesterday we talked about Nedarim that would be valid, but because of the circumstances or the intention, they really are not a binding neder. They do not need a hatara, a release. Now Mishnah Gimel explains a neder where there is force involved or situations, circumstances out of the control of the vower, or vowee in this case. Nidre anosim. Nedarim where there is onus. Onus is what we call circumstances outside of your control. Hidiru et chavero sheochel etzlo. One man made a neder that the other one needs to eat by him, and if he doesn't come and share a meal with him, he will be prohibited from having any benefit, like a carbon. V'cholachu. But then he got sick, osha halabano, or his child got sick, osha ikvu nahar, or he could not get across the river to go and eat at his friend's house. Maybe the bridge was out, the ferry was unavailable, so it was beyond his control. Hare elu nidre anosim. So this is an example of vows where there's onus, where it's out of his control, and so their neder does not apply. Now you might be asking, yesterday we said a vow to try to make someone eat at your house was called nidre zeruzim, because the kavanah wasn't really to make a vow, it was just to urge behavior on someone else's behalf. The Mefarshim say this case is a little different. This could be a case where the invitee had more than one invitation, and the invitee told the inviter, hey, if you make a neder, it will strengthen your invite, and I'll be able to refuse the other invitations and come to you. So this would have been a valid vow, but due to the onus, the circumstances outside of his control, he was unable to actually attend the meal. Great, let's go on to Dalit. Nedarim leharagim. You can make vows to murderers. V'lecharamin and robbers, mafia guys, extorters, lemochzin, and tax collectors and the IRS. Actually, maybe not the IRS. And what is the vow he's making? Shehi truma. He points to a pile of grain in his house, and these people are about to seize it. And he can make a vow, this pile is actually truma, and it's forbidden for me and for you. You can't use it. Afal pisha eina truma, even though he's lying. Or he says, shehen shel beit hamelech, this item that you're about to seize or you want to take from me, it actually belongs to the king or belongs to the government, and they're going to be after you if you take it. Afal pisha einan shel beit hamelech, even though lemaisa, in reality, he's lying. The point of this vow is to convince this mafia extorter or this tax collector that not to seize this item or this produce. Or the murderer we mentioned first, this guy's going to kill the homeowner if the homeowner doesn't surrender this property. And he says, yeah, I'd be happy to surrender the property, but you can't eat it anyway because it's truma or because it belongs to the king and he'll get you. So one quick aside, the mochsin, the tax collectors here, are sort of what we'd call extrajudicial taxes. If the government has a uniform tax code that applies equally to everyone, then it is not allowed in Jewish law to cheat the fair and balanced and uniform tax code. However, if the kingdom gives extra taxes on Jews or has an unfair tax system that is punitive, or these tax collectors are going above and beyond what they were allowed to collect and taking extra on the side for themselves, in those cases, Jewish law has these sort of gray areas where you can try to avoid the extrajudicial layer of taxes. So please don't paskin or make assumptions about the IRS based on the Mishnah. You need to consult your local Orthodox rabbi and accountant before you prepare your taxes. We don't file taxes based on Mishnayot. Now, the Mishnah continues with some arguments about how far this leeway goes in Mishnah Dalet. Beit Shammai omrim b'kol nodrim. Beit Shammai says you can make any neder to avoid seizure or confuse the robbers. Chutz mishvua, but you can't make a shvua. It's more stringent. Beit Hillel omrim af b'shvua. You can even use a shvua if that's needed to save his life or property. Beit Shammai omrim. Beit Shammai says lo yiftach lo beneder, that the homeowner here trying to avoid seizure shouldn't volunteer to make a neder. He shouldn't say, yeah, that's truma and I'm going to make a neder, it's truma. He should wait until the robber says, how do we know? How do you prove it's truma? And then he'll say, well, I can make a neder to that effect. Beit Hillel omrim af yiftach bo. Beit Hillel says he could even bring up it. He could even bring up the subject of making a neder and say, you know what, it's truma and I'm going to make a neder that it's truma, or I'm going to make a neder that it belongs to the government. Beit Shammai omrim b'meh shehu madiru. And Beit Shammai says not only do you have to wait for the this oppressor or extorter to prompt you to make a neder, you can only make a neder in what they're talking about. We're gonna have an example in a moment. Beit Hillel omrim af b'masha einu madiru. And Beit Hillel says you can even add things that you didn't mention. Ketzad. What's the illustration? Amru lo. The extorters, the tax collectors, told him, Emor, you should say, Konam ishti nenet li. Ban your wife from having any hana if this is true, if this is not truma or not belonging to the government. Va'amar konam, and he says, I'm going to make a ban, not only ishti, but ishti uvonai nehenin li, not only my wife but also my children. So Beit Shammai arim ishta muteret. Beit Shammai says the wife is still allowed to benefit from his property because there's this allowance to make these nedarim to escape extortion. Uvana v'surim, but the children are not included in the exemption from the neder because the extorters didn't mention them, just the wife. But Hillel orim elu v'elu matarin. But Hillel says both of them are mutter. There's sort of a broad allowance to use this neder escape hatch from extortion. And also Beit Hillel held, remember, by the fig tree, that if a neder is partially undone, it is fully undone. Yashar koach and sei gesund.